I'd like to welcome our first guest speaker. This is Demetrios Zoppos, the co-founder and CEO of OneFineStay, my boss. Some say that he's the Cypriot godfather of technology startups. All we know is that he thrived through not one, but two dot-com bubbles, and he knows how raising 50 million in funding feels like. He's a Harvard and Cambridge graduate, an ex-McKinsey consultant in e-commerce, previously co-founded two companies, GFX and GradFutures, and he's currently the co-founder and CEO of OneFineStay.
Well, good morning, everyone. Well, thanks to the guys here, for the organizers, for inviting me. I think this is a fantastic initiative. There's lots of very, very smart, tech-savvy people in Cyprus, and this is not very well known outside Cyprus, obviously. And I just hope that this can become a very regular feature, not just here, but also outside Cyprus. A big community of Cypriots outside Cyprus, and both in the UK and the States, especially. And I think it's a great initiative to get people together and get people to rally behind this great cause. Now, I'm not sure why I was asked to front this opening gig here. But then I realized they thought I'm the only guy here, the only mug here to come to the first slot very early in the morning. Obviously, 9:45 in the morning is not the greatest slot for any self-respecting hacker. Probably most people wake up at lunchtime. But after 3 cups of coffee, I think I can get going, and I thought I'd throw the grenade here and try to at least keep things entertaining here for everybody. So first things first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. How did I end up doing this, and why am I here? Well, first of all, I was also once upon a time a bit of a hacker. It was a long, long time ago. It was the era of Ataris and ZX Spectrums. And I was messing about with my BBC Micro, trying to do things like the thing I just saw, the little device that the winners of the hackathon came up with. I was doing a bit of assembly code, writing BASIC, and also that changed now. But I also pulled all-nighters and tried to hack games and write code. It was a very exciting time at the time. You felt top of the world. You felt that it was a great thing to do. It was all about new thing. But then I cut my teeth in professional service a bit. I worked as a consultant for a while. I'm an economist by training. And I got the first taste of the impact of the internet and e-commerce across lots of industries back in the late 90s, working for McKinsey in London. And at the time, I interviewed and I talked to a lot of startups of the time of the era. It was a time of change again, and you could see it was palpable. There's a lot of change happening every day. Now, I'm a more experienced entrepreneur. I bear the scars of battle. I took the plunge 15 years ago. I co-founded a business called GFX in the late 90s, ran it for 5 years to exit. I started up another one called GradFutures, and now I'm on my third gig, OneFineStay. I saw the birth of the internet university. Many of you here probably think that that's the way things always were. When I was at university, people didn't have PCs. You used to go to the library and take photocopies of articles, and you'd go to the computer lab to do computer things. That all changed during my time at university. Now it's unimaginable that people don't go somewhere with their laptop somewhere and doing stuff. But this has not always been thus. It was not like this at all. And it's very, very difficult to actually imagine the world before then. But that's how it is now. And now I'd say I'm a practical rounder, as the guy said here. Is getting stuff done. I'm very much a doer. Let's not forget, entrepreneurship is not just about technology. It's also about rolling up your sleeves and getting stuff done. At OneFineStay, I've pretty much done every single job in the company in most contexts. I was the scooter driver, the cleaner, the plumber, the registrator, the reservator. Also, I act as the CFO, the head of legal. Name it, I've done it. I've done every single job in the company. And why do I do this stuff? What's the story here? Like many of you probably, I just want to change the world. It's a bit boring otherwise. I want to see change happen. And I just hope that many of you have the same approach to life. It's not good enough to just keep going. And I think it's good to see other people who want to have this kind of transformational change. So what I'll do today is I'll try and, I was asked to sort of talk about the topic, and I thought, the best thing to do is just take it a notch up, just elevate the discussion and talk about innovation in general. So first things first, what's innovation? I wanted to separate innovation versus invention here. There's a subtle difference, but an important one. When you talk about inventions, it's about sort of discovery and something new. You stumble upon something. Whereas innovation is something about making changes to something that's established, or renewing, restoring to change, or even introducing as new. This is a subtle difference, but a very important one, that not all innovations are inventions. Most of them are based on older inventions. And what are the characteristics of innovations? One is that the first one is that it challenges conventional wisdom. There's how things are, how things happen, and that a new innovation just challenges that. You say, I don't want to be like that, or it shouldn't be like that. The second aspect of that is, and many of you have seen this from the tech space, is that it's associated with rapid growth or rapid take-up of something. In the VC-backed space, it's a very specific genre of innovation businesses, and they're being sort of funded, and you can see this kind of hockey stick approaches to life, either in terms of number of users, number of revenues, number of whatever. The third aspect is that technology is usually, but not always, part of the secret sauce. There's always a bit of tech in there. But it's not only about technology, and that's something which I'll try and develop in this presentation here a bit later. There's other things in the mix. There's other things that come into innovation. Technology in itself is not enough. And the final thing, which I think is probably the defining thing about innovation, is that it's disruptive. It disrupts. It changes stuff. It changes the world. It's the battle of these kind of alternative paradigms. Now, if you look at kind of, I'm not going to sort of give a sort of scientific presentation here, but I wanted to give you kind of a broad feel for various types of innovations through humanity here. Be that sort of the compass, which came from sort of 2nd century BC in China, all the way to the modern ones, like the internet, for example. But there's many things that happened a long, long time ago I probably don't realize. Money. I hope you like my retro Cyprus pound there. Money, again, it was probably invented, fiat money or paper money was invented in the 11th century in China. And we assume it now. Perhaps a bit less so in Cyprus these days, but the value of money and having just paper money which is not backed by something is something which was a huge innovation that changed the world, transformed the world quite fundamentally. Or even bad things, gunpowder. Gunpowder was introduced to kill people. It wasn't a great thing, but it was invented again by the Chinese in the 12th century. But there's something very surprising, which goes back to the invention versus innovation. Who knows when the fax machine was invented? Well, first of all, who knows what the fax machine is? Have you seen fax machines? Who thinks it was invented in the 1980s? 1950s, 60s? No. The fax machine, the first patent, was in 1843. It was in the mid-19th century. It's incredible if you think about it, because the fax machine was only commercialized in the 1980s. I remember as a kid in Cyprus, it was like all the rage, 1982, 83. Everyone had a fax machine and sent stuff to each other. The first patent was 150 years before the commercialization. There was many, many other things that came into play before you could commercialize something. It takes time to break through sometimes. And this holds true of the web space as well, as many as other things. Who thinks here, raise your hand if you think that the internet or the web is the biggest innovation of all. Who thinks that? There's no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt that that's certainly one of the biggest innovations. And spawned a bunch of other innovations as well. I mean, these things here kind of people are probably very familiar with now. It's part of people's lives. And it's staggering how the web or the internet has impacted people's lives. I'm not just talking about value creation. many of these businesses, as companies, as organizations, their market capitalization is larger than the GDP of Cyprus, some of them several times over. So the value creation in the world economy in a very short period of time has been transformational. But it's not just about that, it's not just money and value, it's also about behavior change. What people do every day has changed fundamentally in a very, very short period of time. It was unimaginable a few years ago that people would be kind of tweeting in the way people are now. And people are very skeptical. What on earth is Twitter? Probably some people are tweeting now as we speak. And that will continue. But also the point I'm trying to make here is that the internet, or the World Wide Web, or the e-commerce, all the things that has spawned around that, would not have been possible without hundreds, literally hundreds of other innovations around it associated. Electricity, the transistor, semiconductors, computing as well. These are very, very big changes, but it took a long time to get from the first computer to what we have today, the personal computing revolution of the 80s and 90s. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants here. There's people who transformed things a long time ago, people who are long forgotten now, and what we are doing now has depended on those innovations. Now, I want to talk to you about one particular type of innovation, and I'll talk to you a bit more about sort of my company, OneFineStay. I call this a meta-innovation, something that is basically built on top of other innovations in e-commerce. It's about collaborative consumption. Collaboration using the web, the way most people think about this is a certain class of economic arrangements where there's shared access to assets or services instead of individual ownership. So you don't have to actually own something to enjoy it, to get value from it. It's often, but not always, enabled by technology and also peer communities. But it's interesting because this type of consumption has been around for a long, long time, even before the web. People were sharing things a long, long time, hundreds of years ago, in communities. But it really took off big time, not even as part of Web 1. This is a very, very new thing. It took off as part of Web 2 in a big way. And it's not just about the technology that underpins that, the enabling part of it, but it's also about the change of behavioral norms. Something has changed recently in people's behavior, and technology has enabled that. In my view, technology has helped in that, certainly, but there's many other social and economic reasons why that has happened. People build more trust. For example, you go on the web, you see what your friends do, and you would do the same. User-generated content or endorsement by your friends encourages you to do things that you'd have otherwise not have done yourself. So this, in my view, this kind of class of changes, innovations called collaborative consumption is a very, very distinctive part or subset of e-commerce innovation. And that is something which I'm involved with this latest company called OneFineStay. You'd have probably seen many businesses, lots of examples of collaborative consumption across many different domains. And here's a quick selection of different businesses across different industries that do things in that space. Some you probably know very well, TaskRabbit or Kickstarter or Lyft. But some of them are kind of a bit more obscure, a bit more esoteric, like the tie society, for example. You can sort of buy a fashion item, a tie, and then share it and then exchange it. Now, OneFineStay, my business here, it's also part of that trend, squarely, firmly in that trend. And let me tell you a bit more about OneFineStay and how we think about innovation. And because it's early in the morning, I'll try and do it through kind of perhaps a bit more of a video here.
So you're heading out of town again. But your home doesn't have to just sit there empty and alone. It can become part of OneFineStay, a service that helps guests to stay in places full of charm and distinction. You don't have to do a thing. We've taken the pain out of offering your home to guests while you're away. We've got insurance, so you don't have to worry about that. We make the beds with our linens, stock the bathroom with towels and toiletries. And if you want some cupboards kept private, no problem. We get to know the guests before they stay, and we meet and greet them too. And we're the ones on call to answer their questions. Once they've gone, we'll put everything back, just as it was. All you have to do is tell us when you won't be at home and think about how you'll use the extra income. We have a carefully curated portfolio of homes around the world. Care to join us?
So again, an example of how we think about technology. This is something which is arguably a peripheral thing to what we do. It's not about the web, it's not about the direct customer experience, but it's something which is an investment in the future. If we get this right, this will transform the way people interact with their home and the way our guests who interact with the home. We think about this from the guest point of view as being an integral part of, say, a business product where people want to self-serve, telemetrics for home, but also unlocks the whole experience for services for people who are the homeowners, irrespective of the stage with OneFineStay. Could be an additional service we can offer to hosts. This is something that we spend probably 2.5 years working on in the background in a very low-key way with a couple of people without it distracting us from the main thing we do. And it's something which we are now trying to roll out in a highly scaled up, more scaled up way to try and prove it in a bit of an anger in an operating environment. So in addition to Sherlock and things like that, we tend to deploy a lot of technology, both to improve the customer experience. For example, give an iPhone with an app to our guests, but also for internal use. I would say probably 80% of our technology deployment is for internal use. For example, we have cleaners, they have checklists on how to clean a home and what to do. And that's, again, something we did as a technology deployment. So I won't spend too much time on this, but I'll try and sum up in terms of what I think, at least I have learned from working in these environments about innovation. First of all, messing things up is good. Most people fear failure much, much more than they actually think of the big idea of a successful thing. One of the biggest sources, I would say, of innovation in our business at OneFineStay is screw-ups, no doubt. Probably every single operating innovation when it comes to business process is a result of some screw-up. A guest getting angry with us, a host getting angry, someone not doing their job properly, somebody forgetting something. Only when you have mistakes do you learn. But you've got to learn from them rapidly. The second thing is that need breeds innovation. It's the best incubator for innovation. If you need to do something, you will find a way of doing it. And being scrappy is the hallmark of startups for a reason, because usually it's a reason why. You need to do something, and therefore you will. My third learning is that lots of people have ideas, and I echo the point that was made by the organizers here. That it's not just about thinking about something, it's just doing it. And sometimes having a bias towards action is integral to getting stuff done. Lots of ideas out there that never make it. I've seen lots of business plans that just ended up on a pile somewhere. You've got to try it. Execution matters. Just do it. Another point about innovation is that it's a labor of love. This kind of caricature of this kind of solitary genius in a basement somewhere, working away, the eccentric scientist working away in a basement, is just not true. Now, they exist, no doubt. I've seen some of them, but they're not the norm. This is not the norm. You have to also go to bat with people who you respect, and you have to socialize innovation. Share the ideas with other people. And the final point I'll make, this is something which I also learned a bit the hard way, I'd say, is that most people tend to overestimate the short-term impact of a change or innovation, but they also tend to massively underestimate the long-term impact. I remember in the 1990s, late 90s, Web 1, the internet, it will eat business alive. Businesses will go out of business. Everything will stop. Of course, it didn't happen. It wasn't quite like that. But over a 15-year horizon, has this transformed things? Absolutely. And many of the things that you are seeing now happening with the web are direct results of what happened in Web 1, when people had to buy their own servers and had this kind of big server farms. Now everything's on the cloud. You can use Amazon Web Services for everything you need these days. But there was an era where you had to build your own thing, host it somewhere, worry about it. I know some of the startups later will tell you more about how they do things, how they still have to do things themselves. And I can tell you with confidence that the pace of change in the web will only accelerate. There'll be more stuff changing. And I'll finish off with some closing thoughts, which are kind of more, I would say, what do Americans say? Apple pie and motherhood. But I'll just say it anyways. I'm sure that other speakers here have probably more coherent, intelligent things to say than me, but I'll give you my 2 cents of wisdom with my parting shot. First of all, I'd say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to all advice you get. You'll get lots of advice, and you should. But be your own person. I think views are like puzzle pieces. It takes many to build a picture. Talk to people, socialize problems, question things early. A lot of the startup success or failure is circumstantial as well. You cannot always generalize from one example. I had 3 gigs so far on my 3rd gig here, and I can still not generalize most things. It's still experiential, I'd say. I'm still learning a hell of a lot. And innovation comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. The second thing is obvious. Work hard. If any of you here are thinking, I'm going to start my own thing, people will tell you, yeah, it's hard work, startups. And I can see some faces here who also have that, what's it called, the two mile stare. In the US military, after Vietnam, they had this 2-mile stare. People who kind of had post-traumatic stress disorder. After seeing kind of the battle, you realize how difficult it is. And if anyone told you that startups is hard work, they lied. It's bloody hard work. It's really the most difficult thing you can imagine. And you cannot do it without some injection of fun as well. You have to really enjoy that to go into that. My other piece of advice is that surround yourself with great people. There is no substitute. You'll be spending day and night with them. You have to make sure they're great and you enjoy working with them. You can never know everything. There's always someone smarter than you, always. And a network such as this one, I think it's a great place to start. This network will see you through your darkest moments. And I would say that my final sort of advice is fear nothing, especially not failure. Do not fear failure. You've got to fail many, many times to get it right. Many great ideas fail, but some make it big. And there's always the mantra that says, there's no such thing, there's failed businesses, but there's no failed entrepreneurs. So with that parting shot, I'd say, fear nothing and go change the world. Thank you.